Alright, I need you guys to lock in because this week the Supreme Court is going to hear Donald Trump's birthright citizenship case. And if we listen carefully, I think we'll get the signals we need to understand what they're going to do. But first we need to be extremely clear about the stakes. Because it was Donald Trump's DHS who posted this graphic, suggesting that deporting 1/3 of the American population would deliver some sort of alternate universe white nationalist dystopia. Then it was the sister kissers over at the Heritage Foundation who posted, without any additional context, America has a legal immigration problem. Needless to say, these people are not looking out for what's best for America. They are ignorant, narrow-minded cult crusaders, and Donald Trump's executive order is just the tip of their sword. Now, the good news is, like all of Donald Trump's tips, this sword is dull, limp, and functionally useless, which is why I think we're going to hear the court eviscerate his order. Now, let me tell you why and how we'll know based on the tone of the conversation. First, the executive order hinges on the phrase subject to the jurisdiction thereof, a phrase written into the 14th Amendment, a phrase confirmed by a landmark Supreme Court ruling known as Wong Kim Ark, and a phrase further sharpened and clarified in the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952. Now, in reaching for this specific interpretation, the Trump administration is actually rehashing the same argument made by a racist Confederate soldier turned lawyer who argued in favor of segregation in Plessy versus Ferguson, and who spent 20 years arguing against birthright citizenship after the 14th Amendment, before he was on the losing side of Wong Kim Ark, which means he sucks at lawyering just as bad as he sucks at war, because he lost on both counts. And now Trump is recycling that same failed argument verbatim, an argument that says children born to parents who are not here legally are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. And they claim that's consistent with the 14th Amendment because they say the 14th Amendment was only to give citizenship to the children of slaves. But the problem is, if you say somebody who is living here is subject to the jurisdiction of a foreign government, you're admitting a foreign government has jurisdiction within our borders, which is a pretty terrible argument to make. On top of that, after Wong Kim Ark was settled at the Supreme Court, Congress reaffirmed it in statutory law through the Immigration and Nationality Act, which uses the same language as the 14th Amendment, but which goes much further by painfully defining citizenship for all of the corner cases that came up over those years, with the most specific one being Section 1401F, which states that a person is a citizen of the United States if they are a person with unknown parentage found within the United States while under the age of 5 years, until shown prior to his attaining of the age of 21 years not to have been born in the United States. Now, in plain English, this means if a child who is under 5 is found anywhere in the United States, by default they are assumed to have been born here and are a citizen, unless someone can prove they were born somewhere else before the child turns 21. Now, this is just an example of the depth and durability of the legal foundation supporting birthright citizenship, which will be at the center of the debate between justices this week. Now, specifically what I'm listening for is for Justice Barrett to refer to English common law. This is her go-to line of thinking when evaluating decisions through an originalist lens, and birthright citizenship specifically is deeply rooted in English common law. I'm listening for Kavanaugh to ask about feasibility, because that was his focus in last year's initial questions, since destroying the centuries deep legal foundation for citizenship would at the very least create a nightmare for hospitals and birth centers. And I'm listening for John Roberts and Neil Gorsuch to invoke the major questions doctrine, which says that any executive action resulting in significant economic or political consequences requires specific congressional authorization that would 100% exist in the Immigration and Nationality Act if authorization were intended, but it doesn't, because it wasn't. See, the brutal fact is that for Donald Trump, for loser Confederate soldiers, and for the soft white doughboys at the Heritage Foundation, this executive order is not just trash. It's trash that is deeply incompatible with over a century of case law and statutory law, in ways that are even more explicit than we saw with the tariff ruling, which you may recall went against Trump in a 6-3 vote, and which is why I think, come June, we are going to see a 6-3 or maybe even a 7-2 ruling against Trump and his cult crusaders, and in defense of the future of the United States.